Hello, everybody, and welcome back to yet another Insight session. This month, it's May of 2022, looking at the US regionals banks and the mobile performance in each of these segments. And the hero of 2022 so far is TD Bank, and consistency is key. Tony Patrick's going to take us for a little bit of an insights journey around what they've been doing so consistently well. And we're also going to touch, Tony, on Fifth Third as well, aren't we? And a couple of areas that they're doing quite strongly in, and areas where we can compare them to TD Bank, that they can make a few gains. Over to you, my friend.
We certainly can. Yeah, we certainly can, Glenn. So TD is the focus today, but you can see here the regional banks we're going to cover off, looking at TD Bank, Key Bank, Santander, Fifth Third, Regions, Huntington, M&T, and Citizens. So they're among the mix of what we'll cover today. And the first one, as we always start off with this, it's a nice starting perspective, is what are the trends we can see in this data. Actually, one of the things I can see across these regionals is there's a few of these banks are not showing the consistency that we like to see. We've seen in other areas. We see a bit of ups and downs going on. So there's sort of problems happen, they go and fix them. Problems happen, and they're fixed again. So there's getting consistency is really important. So what we can see, one of the things I can see, though, is with KeyBank. Now, we discussed KeyBank in a recent episode, but what I can see here is we can see that KeyBank actually, it sort of peaked at April last year. It did really well, but it dropped off very sharply into June. But what I can see, though, is since probably October last year, even though we're seeing some ups and downs, and we're actually seeing an increase in May, that the decline is actually consistently sort of moving down from about that above 3.25 to levels about 1 point below that. So it remains to be seen whether they can maintain, based on their historical work they've done, is whether they can maintain this jump in
Potentially a case of being reactive rather than proactive around the app and what they're looking at doing.
I think so too, and there's probably some core issues they might not be aware of because they're sort of hidden underneath some other major ones, and they might not be aware of those, which is why that decline, they haven't probably spotted those yet, potentially. So what we can also see is at the top here we can see, I'll just put my mouse over this one, which is TD Bank. So we saw that TD had some problems into September last year, and they maintained those problems. There was probably 3 to 4 months where it was a dip. And they picked that up in March. Now, often when you see a pickup of that type there, you often see it sort of comes back down, which we're seeing with others. They sort of pick up and come back down. But what we can see clearly here is that TD has picked up. It's maintained that level of leadership into April and then increased that level into May. And they're sort of fighting out at the top there amongst with Santander and also we've also got Fifth Third. So what we'll do at the end of this is have a quick look at Fifth Third and what they can potentially do to close that gap as well. So what I will do is just have a quick look. Now, this is a great, nice first perspective of how this is going. Now, again, this is our SURF pillars, which covers the areas like security and authentication, usability, reliability, and functionality. These areas here give us a great understanding about what your score is going to be. You improve these things, your score will definitely go up. And of course, being low on these things is better because these are pain points. And one of the highlights for TD is things like we can see here with security, they're sitting on around 3. Although Fifth Third is actually doing a similar position, around 3%. This is in May this year. So they're doing reasonably well in their security and authentication with Fifth Third. But where we see TD do really well is consistency across the board. So usability, 7%, reliability, 9%, and functionality, 10%. So issues with functionality are very low. If you want to compare that directly to KeyBank, we can see it's sort of, you can triple all these things and more to hit what KeyBank are up to. So KeyBank have a lot of work across the board to improve. So what I'll look at now is just the same data we just saw, but stack that up so we can see sort of what's the overall pain points from the SURF pillar perspective. So what we can see here is that TD is sitting below 30%. We have seen that US Bank actually sits about 10% or lower sometimes. So that is our benchmark across the globe. But we see here that TD is sort of getting close to that, and that's why it's leading in this space. we see that Santander and Fifth Third are sitting around that 55% sort of level, somewhere around there. So that's why they're sitting in that second place and not in the first place at the moment. They have some room to improve across there. So what I can have a look at now is let's have a look at Fifth Third compared to TD. So Fifth Third is sort of competing up the top there with Santander and TD. But what makes them different? And where are Fifth Third doing well, and where can they improve? So what we're looking at here is the average score when people talk about these particular features. Now, we've got these features in this order for a reason. These are the most important things to people. Now, obviously, the very first one, logging in, isn't a core banking function. But of course, when that goes wrong, it's a massive problem for customers because they cannot get to any features from that point. So obviously, it's a very important one, a gateway area to actually make sure you've got that working. Now, Fifth Third actually is doing well. We saw that previously, where they only had about 3% issues in that area. So they're scoring reasonably well at 1.9 compared to 1.6 for TD. So obviously here, higher is better. Then we hit, though, these next couple of features where App Check Deposit is sitting at 2.8 there for Fifth Third, and it's sitting at 4 for TD. So for TD, it's actually having a really positive contribution to their score, and people are having a really good experience on that check deposit journey in terms of scanning and all that process. Whereas for Fifth Third, it's not. So here is a key place where Fifth Third could make some improvements. We can also see that the app payment feature isn't quite up to scratch for Fifth Third. It's sort of sitting about 0.6 points behind TD. But there are some really good things that Fifth Third are doing, like the transfer funds feature. It's slightly ahead of TD in that area. So they're doing a really positive thing. And again, potentially maybe with the biometric login. So that's connected to that whole login area. And it looks like they're doing pretty well in that space. So very positive stuff for Fifth Third, although TD is still leading in a lot of key areas and definitely want to aim towards being at that level or higher. So thank you, Glenn.
Yeah, that's great stuff, mate. And really, really a simple visualization of what you can focus on to either keep the gap or bridge the gap between your nearest competitors and prioritize those actions and those features and functions that you can really work on to close that gap. So really appreciate the insights. It's great to see the Epiphany tool getting showcased like this and simplifying the process of understanding the app world. If you would like a deeper look at your bank and your app and where you can close the gap on your competition, feel free to reach out to Tony or I on LinkedIn. You can check them out on our website, and feel free to drop us a line. We're more than happy to have a chat and give you a few insights yourself. Thanks, folks.